righty. Thank you, thank you so much for joining us. It's been surreal to me, like the opportunities that I've had to meet people, specifically people that I've witnessed from afar. I was going through my immigration process somewhere in SoCal, and the TV was on, and I saw somebody with a uniform on that I didn't expect to be in handcuffs, and it was basically you walking into or walking out of the process you were about to go through.
Yeah.
It was surreal for me to kind of see that and also hear the words war crimes and aspects of just how it was CNN, by the way. So I think people can make up their minds about some of the narrative that was behind that. But before we talk about some of these aspects, like where were you born? What was that? What part of the country produced you?
So, yeah, well, first off, I just want to say, man, it's an honor to be down here and getting to meet you face to face. I've listened to a couple of your interviews, and obviously you're good buddies with Sean.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we've hung out down here and chased a few guys selling drugs and stuff like that. Cool.
Yeah.
Dude. Cool.
Yeah,
dude.
he is, dude. I love Sean, and so yeah, thank you for inviting me down here. It's been a hot minute since I've been in Mexico, but it's awesome. So yeah, I was born in Paterson, New Jersey. I was a military brat. My dad was in the
family military people.
Oh yeah, pretty much. I'd say 90% all.
So it's a tradition.
Yeah, it's one of those unspoken traditions. It's not forced like you will join the military. I think it just happens naturally, just when you have all of your relatives in. So, yeah, my dad was in the Army. He was a West Point grad. And then we moved around, growing up every 2 years. I grew up in Asia most of my childhood. So
what parts of Asia?
I lived in China and Beijing for 2 years. I was only, 5 or 6 years old. And then Korea, Seoul, Korea, Japan, Germany, and then we just traveled around a bunch while we were in those places as well. So we kept bouncing back from Asia back to Washington, D.C., because my dad would then do a Pentagon rotation, and then we'd go to another country.
While you were growing up, did you have like a set plan in your mind? Well, I'm just going to grow up, figure out my shit out, and then join the military?
No, there was no set plan. It was, I think growing up in that environment, you don't know any different. You're just like, this is my life,
This is the baseline normal.
Yeah.
People go, we travel, we don't move around.
Yep. And you're obviously different from everyone else. Like when I'd come back to DC, I had my set friends there that stayed there. Their parents weren't in the military, so it was definitely different in that aspect of trying to explain to them like why I'm leaving again for 2 years, and then you're constantly having to make friends.
Yeah.
Every place you go, but that's a blessing. That's just I think that gave me the characteristic of adaptability. I can adapt real quick, no matter where I'm at.
Is your dad trying to guide you into your future in a way?
I think, yeah, he unknowingly did. I mean, he was a huge, growing up, he was definitely always making me, I was in Boy Scouts, I was, sports, and then scuba diving. He was a big scuba diving nut, so we would scuba dive everywhere. And he was a big runner, so he'd go on these 30-mile runs and take me with him on a bike, which I'd go kicking and screaming, but go anyways.
there was a resistance
oh,
there.
Yeah. But
did that get, teenage years, I imagine. That's when my resistance happened.
Yeah. Once I hit teenage, so that's when he got out of the military, and that's when we ended up in Indiana, of all places, which I was not happy about because I had no idea. I had no idea what Indiana had.
Yeah.
I saw the movie Hoosiers, and it was all cornfields, and I was like, that's what I thought. I was like, this is going to be bullshit. But we ended up moving to Fort Wayne, which is like a big city in Indiana, and I spent my high school career there, but that's where I really started. I started to rebel in 8th grade, and then that just continued on through my high school.
When you say rebel, violence, uh, alcohol, getting into trouble.
Yeah, it started. Well, violence was always there. As far as my mom and her side of the family's all from Jersey, and then my whole dad's side of the family's from Boston. So you got two strong.
You're not a pushover, basically.
Yeah, and that's the way I was raised. Was like nobody pushes you over, and if somebody does something to you,
Also Irish.
yeah, oh yeah, you got to throw that in there as well.
Yeah.
Like there's a temper, and and if somebody does something to you or something to your family, then you do something about it.
Yeah, there's a need to prove yourself when you get confronted by something. I guess that's somewhere in the Catholic guilt DNA software that we get programmed with on an early age. You're trying to adapt this to this new space where there's no movement anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is stagnation like an issue for you there, I guess?
I think so. I mean, I wouldn't know when I was that age, obviously. I just know I was, angry.
What? Who were you angry at?
I think just from, there's probably some residual stuff from moving around. I mean, I remember always being pissed off every, 2 years when they're like, hey, because it wasn't planned out. It wasn't like, hey, we're here for 2 years. When you're a kid, you're just going through it. So then once you, settle down somewhere, you got a good tight group of friends. They're like, and we're leaving.
And then they're gone.
Yeah. So I think I was always angry about that. But, you're a kid, so there's nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I just, that was probably inside me. And then once we went to Indiana, it was just different. Indiana was different. The culture was different. Like I said, I grew up in Asia, and then when we came back to DC, I went to a very diverse school. I think the white kids were the minority.
Yeah.
So when I moved to Indiana, it was a complete opposite. It was all white kids, and I think there was like 4 black kids in my school. So that I didn't like that. It wasn't what I was used to. But I ended up making some pretty tight friends there right off the bat. And the friends I always made weren't. I always chose dudes they were troublemakers, but
Exciting.
They were loyal.
Yeah, exciting. Yeah, don't tell on you.
Yeah.
I grew up skateboarding.
Yeah.
I had some issues when I lost my brother when I was 13, and that basically kind of like wrecked my family structure.
Mm-hmm.
And what I couldn't find at home, I would look for in friends. Like hey, this family is gone now. Let me figure out how to make a new one out of these weirdos, I guess.
Yeah.
You get left behind in a lot of ways. So that aspect of trying to find what you need in your weird friends, and of course, like probably you're a kid, so you're trying to figure out where you fit into. And if you're on mine, I was like, I wanted to do things. Like I liked risk.
Same.
And I liked that my parents would call me out on risky behaviors because it means that I mattered at least. That was my way of kind of like, hey,
like you're doing something.
Hey, I'm still here. I know my brother's gone, but I'm still here. So pick me up at the police station. That aspect of it. You're trying to figure out life, and then this structure. You said risky behavior. Again, where's this aspect of joining the military? That's not even in the foreground.
No, not in high school. It wasn't even like a thought. And as a matter of fact, I was not against the military. I was against, I guess, like I'm not going to conform and go down that route, right? So I spent my whole high school career just, doing drugs, going out, partying, fighting. Like that was a big thing.
And I've heard some of your previous conversations. Mushrooms.
Yeah.
Like you were doing mushrooms when you were a teen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking, looking back now, I think it was all doing that to escape, right? Yeah, it was like, I don't like the way I feel because I was an angry kid. So I'm going to do this to sort of let loose.
To me, like that's fascinating, kind of funny because most people that go through experiences like yours, that they find the mushrooms after, right?
Yeah.
Like I would do mushrooms when I was a kid, and they didn't make me see God or anything. They're a pretty good place to hide it.
Yeah, it was a party drug, you know. It was, you know, and I didn't get into anything heavy like cocaine. You know, I tried coke twice, and it just didn't. I was like, I don't like this. I don't like the way it makes me feel.
Was it that you had that already in you naturally? I mean,
I think so.
I mean, you're already running on all engines, and all of a sudden you add more to it.
Yeah, it was
You
like
don't want any of
overload.
that.
Yeah, and then I was just like, this. I definitely don't need to be doing this.
What? So you're. I mean, I guess like I'm trying to kind of put myself in that mindset. You're really not about structure. The military sounds like something really far off. You're doing your own thing.
Yep.
What music are you listening to?
Oh, dude, I went through like phases. You know, I started off listening to heavy metal when I was, you know, fifth, sixth grade, like Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and then I was funny, man. All my friends, you know, all listen to heavy metal too, but then I secretly would be in my room and I'd listen to hip hop.
Oh, okay.
I found when I was like in seventh grade is when I found I would listen to this hip hop station in my room, and dude, that was it. I was like, I love this genre. I love everything about it.
Yeah. Did that music follow you later on in your career? Like, would you put that on in your headphones when you go do?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like for me, it's like a weird space where in your teenage years you find that basically you find the soundtrack to your later life, I guess, in a lot of ways.
yeah,
Like when I went to do shit later on when I went active, I was listening to Misfits and to like punk rock and stuff like that. So that's what I would listen to later on. Where I'm from, everybody was listening to Banda, like these narco corridos and all this shit, and I was like listening to the Misfits on my headphones. And look at people who would look weird at me. So when does this aspect of service pop into your head, or figuring that out?
So I barely graduated high school. You know, my parents had sent me away my junior year because I was just uncontrollable. So they sent me to a boys' school / you know, troubled teen school, and I got kicked out of there.
Yeah.
And that was that. I think that was a point where my parents were like, "Dude, this kid he's not going to listen to anything. He's going to be on his own path." So I actually went back to the same high school my senior year. The principal there, God bless him, he was like, "All right, dude, I'm going to let you, you know, finish out here." And I did my best to stay out of trouble. Still barely graduated. And then, you know, my parents were big advocates on college, which I think they already knew by then. They're like, I don't know if this kid's going to be the one. But they were like, we want you to try it. So I went to community college for, I would say, half a semester. And it's like, no, I'm not doing this.
What about it?
I just didn't
made you
care.
bail?
I didn't care. I was like, don't give a shit about any of this. Like I knew I wanted to do something, you know, big, but I just didn't have it figured out.
It was
yet.
nebulous.
Yeah,
It was
at that
nebulous
point,
thing.
yeah, there was no vision. It was just I just had a feeling, right?
Yeah.
And college wasn't it.
Was it mattering? Was it service? Was it doing something that you could get recognition for?
All of that. I think, you know, and it all comes down to, you know, making my parents proud, you know, and trying to do something, because I knew I was a disappointment, you know, like as far as the things I was doing. You know, I had enough foresight or insight to know, like, hey, I know what I'm doing is a disappointment to my parents, but I didn't care. Like, I'm going to go do my own thing. But I think eventually I reached a point where I was like, man, I have to, like, go prove myself and, you know, get redemption for everything that I've done. And so I think, you know, I've told the story before. I was on shrooms one night, hanging out with my same buddies, and it's like 3 a.m.
I think we have that in common. I was also on some when I saw an ad in the newspaper. But yeah, so for people that don't know what mushrooms do, I guess there's a focused clarity to them, like a weird focused clarity when you're on mushrooms. And if you've been pondering a lot of things, they turn into one thing.
Yep.
I guess that's how I describe it for people.
Yeah, I think that's a good, just definitely a good description, because I don't think when you take the mushrooms, and I wasn't taking them to like find myself or
Yeah.
like find an answer, but it comes to you,
Yeah.
and I think that's that night when I think because I was thinking, I was like, all right, I got to go do something. I have to do something and make my parents proud. When I saw the military recruiting commercial, I was like, that's it.
That's gonna
I'm
be it.
going. Yeah. And so I drove down to the recruiting office at like 4 a.m. Was like chain smoking cigarettes, waiting for the recruiter to get there. And I already had an idea. I mean, I grew up obviously around the military. My dad was huge, watching military movies. I watched Platoon and all those type of military movies over and over. So I knew I wanted to do something like be a warrior. I was like, I want to fight, right? So I went into the recruitment office and was like, hey, I was like a wet dream. I'm like, I'm ready to join.
What year is this?
This is 98 or 99.
So this is like 9/11 is in front of us.
Yeah.
But there's no notion of that. There's nothing going on per se, but it's the U.S., so they're bound to get into some shit later on.
It's inevitable, right? But my thought process when I joined was, you would think like growing up around the military, I'd have a little bit more knowledge, but I didn't. I just was like, I thought I was going to go fight regardless. I'm like, they'll find a spot to send us to. And I knew, I was like, if I become a Navy SEAL, I'm definitely going to go to war.
Yeah.
Like
And you say Navy SEAL, like what concepts do you have of the Navy SEALs? Like where were your ideas or notions of who they were or what they did?
I really hadn't, and that's another thing. I had no concept. Like that's what, I hear guys on other podcasts, other team guys are like, that's what I wanted to be since I was little. Like I read up on them. I had none of that, man. It literally was, I was in that office on shrooms, looked up, he had a SEAL poster. I was like, what's that?
What is this? What does this poster look like?
I think it was like a guy coming out of the water, with his
The
scuba
booty
mask.
hat?
Yeah.
The
Scuba
mask, yeah.
gear. And like he had, an MP5 and just
MP5s.
looked badass,
My notion of the SEALs were just the Charlie Sheen.
Yeah. Well, I grew up watching that movie as well. So I did have that.
Jumping off a bridge.
Yeah.
So
they're cowboys.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I wanted to be around. I was like, if I'm going to join, I want to be around guys that are outside the box, get the job done, but not in a structured military manner, right? At least that's what I thought in my head.
nebulous still.
Yeah, definitely. So I was like, that's what I want to do. Obviously, the recruiter was like, oh, yeah, sure. Well, he just like recruiters do. They're like, yep, whatever. You're ours now.
Yeah, you just sign.
Yeah, exactly. So I signed, didn't tell my parents at all until I think 2 days before I left.
What was their reaction?
My mom was, I think they were fine with it. They were a little worried that they were pissed. My dad was pissed that I didn't come to him and like ask for his advice or bring him with me. And that's
what did he want for you? Like if it was up to him, where would he have sent you? Like
he probably would have pointed to me towards the Army because that's where he's from. He's very proud of being in the Army. But all of my other relatives are Navy. They're all pilots, fighter pilots, helicopter pilots. And I was like, I didn't want to do that, but I wanted to do. And being told, like, when I told the recruiter I wanted to be a SEAL, the first thing he was like, no, dude, that is the hardest, training. Like,
one in
nobody
a million
makes
shot.
it. Yeah, which made me want. I was like, well, then I definitely want to do it. Like now. And that was when a sort of switch flipped in my mind. The day that I signed up, I knew I was like, my life's going to change. So I started cutting off a lot of the people that not cutting them off, but like, hey man, I'm trying to go on the straight and narrow. But I still was doing some things all the way up until I left.
Yeah.
But I definitely was the course had changed, right?
Yeah. You had purpose.
Yeah. And it was
Which
like,
is
it set
that's
in.
one of the biggest drugs on the planet, just purpose.
Oh man. And I think about, now back then and just, young 19, 20-year-old Eddie, and I'm like, dude, the amount of purpose and drive I had back then was
Performance enhancer.
Oh man, there was nothing that was stopping me.
Yeah.
I became obsessed.
Your mom was upset. Okay, well, when I made my decision, they were fucking horrified. Because basically, where I'm from, it's a suicide mission, basically. My mom pleaded with me for about 3 days to not go through with it.
Yeah.
But I had this aspect in myself where I also was I'm not doing anything with my life. Went to medical school. That didn't go anywhere. I did like about a year and a half of that. And then again, I didn't feel like what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Then I had the same don't do it. And also you're not going to be able to go through with it aspect of doubt.
Was that in your own mind?
Yeah. I mean, my family, like my friends were like, you?
Oh, same. It was the same thing.
And I don't know what about that just made me. That was the worst thing they could have done, I guess.
Yeah, fired you up even more.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to prove all of you wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a lot of that in me too. All my friends were against it. They were like, why are you leaving? And in Indiana, like nobody really leaves that area, right? And it's a good place to grow up. So it's very unheard of for people just like, hey, I'm taking off, right?
Yeah.
So I had a lot of that. I think my dad was like, you're not going to make it past boot camp. You're going to hit somebody.
What branch did you go into? We haven't talked. We mentioned that.
I went to the Navy right off the bat.
You went straight to the Navy?
Yeah. So I signed up to be a corpsman, which is a medic.
Yeah.
And the only reason I did that was I was told that's a sure thing to get into the SEAL pipeline. Like they're hurting for corpsmen. They want medics. So I signed up, but then came to realize after boot camp, they're like, no, dude, you're not going to SEALs. Like you're going to go to medical school, and then from there you're going to the needs of the Navy. You don't even have a contract, and rightly so. That's what I get for not doing my due diligence.
A chain, basically, it's a chain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It ended up being a blessing though, man. Like I got to choose when I was at Corps school. You get to choose whether you want to go to the fleet, which is go on a ship, or go work in a hospital, or you can go to the Marine Corps because the Marines do not have their own medics. They get them from the Navy.
Program. Yeah.
So I automatically was like, I want to go to the Marines. I was already disappointed in the Navy. Boot camp was not what I thought it was going to be. It was a joke. And
when you say it's a joke, do you have some sort of preconceived notion of what boot camp would be?
Yes.
From where? Where are you getting these ideas?
Movies and stuff I saw on TV.
Is it Full Metal Jacket?
Yes.
Because that's what that's immediately what I. This is all militaries. This is how they train, right? This is all. It's not true.
No, and that was a big awakening the first day of boot camp. I get off and I'm expecting to like have these big warriors come out and like. We're about to beat the shit out of you, but mold you into what you want to be. And it just wasn't that. It was, some out of shape, some of them were fat, and they just were screaming. And I remember I just had no respect. I was looking at them like, dude, you're not what I pictured, and I was like, my dad, like screaming. I was like, I grew up with my dad. Like, come on now, this is nothing.
That's a weird experience. Like, but mine was, I expected that, some of that, I guess, because of paramilitary training for us, which I didn't figure out. I said, I'm going to join them. It was weird police unit. It's paramilitary training. And these people beat us physically. So it was like to the contrary of, there's going to be some structure, they beat us senseless sometimes. So it was pretty horrific. But it changed you.
Yeah.
It changed. It legit transformed me. So you went off to the Marine Corps, which is a completely different
it's
formation.
a different culture, and they do a great job of. So when you choose to go to the Marines, they send you to field medical school, and that is basically like a mini Marine boot camp for 3 months. Of hey, this is how the Marines operate. This is what you will be doing. So you do nothing there but hump. go on ruck marches, learn how the culture works, learn what your job is going to be.
Are
in
you
a Marine
relishing
platoon.
this?
Yeah.
Or
Now I was like, now I'm somewhere where I'm like, this is starting to look like what I want to do.
what about that pressure? What about it is what you're looking for? I don't know, structure. Were you looking for like challenge?
Challenge for sure, and always structure. I needed it. I think that's why I thrived in my 4 years with the Marines. I loved how disciplined they were, just how regimented they were on everything. And there's good and bad to it, but for me at that time is exactly what I needed. And I also like the fact, even though we were at this field med school, and it wasn't like super hard, but I'm watching other people that are falling out and they're quitting, and I'm like,
Why are they quitting?
yeah, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, what the hell, like, what did you think you signed up for?
Yeah.
But that just drove me more, like, okay, now I want to like
This is where I need to
level
be, I
up.
guess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like
So
like for me, when I start getting yelled at and start people stepping on my back and kicking the shit out of me and all that, I found out that people were throughout my life, I was looking for examples of men.
mm-hmm.
And, my dad's great. He's a great guy, but he's a pacifist. My brother is a great guy, but he's a party animal. And most of my friends were great, but they listened to Rage Against the Machine and they believed some of that nonsense that they would scream about in those songs. But violence was like foreign to a lot of them. Anyway, they would call me over like, hey, we're going to get into a fight. And they knew I was all about it.
Yeah.
But when I got there and I started seeing the guys that trained us were mostly members of the GAFE, like Mexican Army SF guys.
Mm-hmm.
These guys, savages, great guys, highly educated, all of them great people, but just, cold. And
How did you, when you were going through that and realizing how they were, I mean, did that entice you?
I started seeing other people hate them.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it was like, how can I get there?
Yes.
Where none of this shit matters. Because I had this experience of running at 4 a.m. For like 3 hours with a ruck on my back, and then coming back to a space where I had to do push-ups. And the guy that was running us was twice my age, and he was doing everything with us.
Yep.
And people around me were like, motherfucker. Like I was like, holy shit, how can I
be like this guy?
How can I be that guy?
Yeah. That's where I was. I think that's where I was for most of my career, is you're always looking at certain individuals that you're like, I want to be like that guy, or I want to take some of his attributes, definitely. And I had that in the Marine Corps. The leaders that I had when I checked in to my first platoon, I mean, dude, these guys were, the first sergeants and COs were, in their 30s at the time, and just like savages.
Yeah.
I mean, they were all about training, and doing the hardest training there is in the most miserable environments. And I thrived in that. I liked it. I like the aspect of, it's only the strong survive, because you had guys that go out there and they're not about that life, and you can see them sort of fade away, or like I want to get out of here. And that just, I think, kept driving me more like, this is the group that I belong to, and it's a small group.
People dropping out.
Yeah, and just, I guess, constantly trying to find that tribe of dudes that are willing to give it all, you know, and do whatever it takes to get the mission done. And that's sort of what I was constantly driving myself towards. And I when I was with the Marines, I volunteered for everything. I was like, any school that came up, and it bit me in the ass. I have probably one of the best stories I have. And it was like one of the biggest learning lessons for me. I was brand new. I think we I just checked in. I was like a month and a half in, and I was motivated. I mean, I would, they do workouts in the morning, and then I would go do my own workouts. I would work out in the lunch, and then in the evening.
Yeah.
I mean, any free time I had, I was training in some form or fashion, not really knowing what I was doing, just doing it. And so the officer at the time, he was like, "Oh, this guy's motivated." He's like, "Do you want to go to assault climbers course? It's a special forces assault climbers course." And of course, I'm like, 19. I'm like, "Yeah." He sends me to this course, and it's full of SEALs, recon or force recon back then, and these guys are, their 30s. These guys are like, seasoned dudes, and here I am, this 19-year-old, and I could keep up. I actually was like in the front of most of the physical aspects, but when it came to the knot tying and all of the intricacies that came to
Problem solving,
I was lost.
Map reading.
I just didn't have the maturity. Yeah.
You're
And
lost.
they definitely pinpointed I was the weakest link every day and would torture me sort of at the end. They would put a sack over my head and then be like, "Hey, you tie these knots now and this amount of time, and if you don't, no one's leaving. Like, you are holding everybody up." And this happened every day. And so I'd have these guys that I wanted to be like ridiculing me for, an hour while I'm in this blindfold. And
Easy.
yeah, they're just like, "You piece of shit. Like, you're worthless. Like, why are you doing this?" And I didn't quit, but I would go home every night dreading going back the next day. But I did it anyways. And at the end of the course, it was the last day, they booted me. And it was, at the time, I mean, I was too young to really like understand what had just happened. I was definitely devastated inside, like, I failed. But I think the fact that I was able to go through that at such a young age in the military sort of set me up for success going forward, where I knew I was like, all right, I got some things to work on. I'm not at that level yet, but the fact that I didn't quit, the fact that I kept showing up every day and taking that, I was like, dude, I can take whatever you throw at me.
That hazing aspect of it, which, I don't know, it comes out in the news every now and then, people complaining about it or people suffering through it, but it's essential.
It's definitely essential, and it's all in your, like, if you want to be the victim, then you can be the victim, I guess. And that's the mindset that has sort of been, I think it's an epidemic. It's definitely in our country, with our younger generation, and even some of the older guys. It's like, if I can make myself a victim, then I can be the winner.
Yeah, if we can nerf everything around you. Yeah. No edges, wear a helmet.
Exactly.
You won't worry about your feelings and your pronouns, and you're going to be fine.
Yeah. And I think we've seen where that's taken us. So
yeah, I mean, every now and then I hear about hazing in the military in the U.S. And I'm like, you should come down.
Yeah, exactly.
But at least for me, the aspect that you say, that when nobody's leaving unless you perform this, like, all of us it's gonna set for all of us.
Yeah,
and that's the pressure.
Oh yeah.
And this is a training setting, so nobody's dying there.
Nobody's dying. Nobody's,
But it's preparing you for when people could die. Mm-hmm. And that mental fortitude aspect that you need to have somehow created for you, it's essential.
Yeah, it leveled me up for sure. Even though it was a failure, it leveled me up to just have I guess I was just stronger mentally. And that, like, anytime you go through stuff like that, if you don't quit, if you don't make yourself the victim and you learn from it, then you're going to level up.
I mean, you always have these two types. And I remember, just through my own experience, the people that would blame the instructor or the instruction, mm-hmm. and the guys that would eat themselves up.
Yes.
And I could immediately tell, like, that guy's in the bathroom punching the wall. That guy is going to come back and figure it out.
Yeah, because there's no amount of pressure or hazing that you can do. You're for guys like that, and I'm sure you're one of them, and I would think I was one of them. Like, you're already putting enough pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
That there's nothing that you can do to me that's going to make me feel worse than I'm already making myself feel.
I always have the imagine this monk flagellating himself, whipping himself, because that's. I mean, you're your own worst enemy. You should be.
Yeah, and some
In that way.
Yeah,
The failing part of it, you highly motivated individuals. I can't fail. I have to do this fucking thing again until you fucking get it right. But most people don't even show up. Well,
no,
don't even fail because they don't show up. That aspect of it is also kind of interesting. How it starts separating segments of the population into smaller and smaller units.
Yeah,
And that's you're basically going through a humanity filter. Basically that's what it should be.
that's what it used to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
things
That's what it felt like, at least
Yeah.
it used to be.
But it's changing.
It has changed, for sure.
From there to the selection.
Yeah, so I did that course, and then I also volunteered. I did Marine Combat Water Survival Instructor course, which is that was another tough one. And then I also got
What about the water? Is it that the aquatic aspect of these trials and tribulations? I fucking hate the water, by the way. Fuck that shit. But that's a common theme I see in a lot of these testing and filters. Again, it's humanity filters for people. What is it about water do you think that is capable of breaking even the strongest men?
because once you're in the water, there's nothing you can do. You're not going to beat the water. You can't physically.
You're not going to rock through it.
Yeah,
You're no amount of cardio.
You have to learn how to be calm and trust your capabilities. And even when you're pushed to the limit in the water, and there's times that they would take you down and 15 feet deep and hold you down there until you're about to pass out, bring you back up, and then take you back down again over and over. And
is it the surrender aspect of it that I think probably
so.
breaks a lot of people about that?
Yeah, because you do almost have to have a surrender. Like, okay, if I pass out, I pass out.
It's a weird. People talk about waterboarding. Fuck that.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure you've had your experiences with this. So have I.
It's interesting.
That sucks.
But I imagine this aspect of being basically simulated drownings is
it scares people, and it's it is scary. But I think if you just learn to let go and be calm, and that's really what being in the water is all about, is just remaining calm no matter what happens, and just trusting your abilities in there. And I think people have a hard time doing that, especially if you're not comfortable in the water. That's going to be a huge problem.
Yeah.
Because if you're not comfortable, they're going to make you even more uncomfortable till you quit. And luckily, like I talked about earlier, my dad had, put me through the paces of diving and being in the water all the time, and so I think that was a huge benefit on my side. And so I made it through that course.
Some things we experienced when we were kids, teenage kids, those things we carry those things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I remember doing my qualifying run in skateboarding sneakers, and I outran everybody because I was skateboarding everywhere. So I was fucking cardio was like a motherfucker. So I could run everywhere. And when it came time to obstacles and stuff like that, I ran from the cops all the time. So I already had that and shit. Risk taking and risky behavior, to tag and all that shit. So I had some of those aspects, and I remember going back to those experiences and being ashamed of them, kind of, because like now I'm surrounded by all these people that have military background, that clean cut people, but I'm not that. I have some of the other aspects in me.
Yeah.
For people that want to go into this line of work and stuff like that, the experience beforehand. Everybody thinks that you're going to get everything you need to form you there, but some of those people have been forming themselves since. It's
already formed. Yeah, like that's what pushes you in that direction.
You're just revealing what's already kind of there.
Yeah. Which is, that's the majority of the SEAL teams. Is now that I'm out and I see guys that are getting out and they do a lot of work, to try and fix themselves. A lot of it that we all come from some kind of trauma in our childhood, and it differs, but it's what's driven us to go do that job.
A bent people that get stretched out.
Yeah.
You find your way to Buds.
Yeah, I went to Marine Corps Sniper School first.
Okay.
And
how was that?
That was definitely an experience. So I made my way into State Platoon, which was Sniper Platoon. Did the screening for that, and they really liked me. So they were like, "Hey, we're going to give you a slot, even though you're not a Marine."
What about you that they like? What aspects of you that you started to notice that were getting recognized by some of these people that you wanted to basically emulate?
I mean, I think the fact that I had no other distractions. I literally was like, okay, I'm doing this. Focus on being the best sniper, being the best medic as a sniper I can be. And so, I mean, that was my life. I lived that life. And then I also was still training to go be a SEAL. So on my off time, I was going off swimming, running, doing whatever I could to better myself.
Were you doing your own research on the side? Were you learning from older guys? Were you doing the extra effort of, hey, how do you do that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the guys in my platoon, those were some of the best leaders I had in the military. And these guys were only like E6s, but they had been around and they were so focused and obsessed on the job. We would train nonstop.
It was everything.
Yes. Any free time that we had, it's like, okay, we're going to go stalk. Okay, we're going to go out into the field and do a 4-day patrol. Okay, we're going to, and like when everybody had off time, we were out bettering ourselves, right? I love that aspect of it. And I think they saw the fact that this guy doesn't complain about anything. He's always on, does what's asked of him. So they gave me the option. They're like, you can go do this sniper school, but you're not going to get credit for it.
Oh.
Because you're in the Navy.
Oh.
And it's...
When you say credit, I mean, you're not going to get...
a certificate saying you went through. And I was like, I don't care. I'll do it. I was like, to me, anything I was doing at that time was just bettering myself to be a SEAL. Like, this is going to help me out when I actually go try out to be a SEAL. So I went through Marine Corps Sniper School, made it all the way through, and at the end... they gave me the hog's tooth, which is they give everybody, and then they gave me a write-up, and it was really awesome, saying, I had performed just as good as everybody else, went through the whole course. And then I think 9/11 had happened right before, a little bit before I went to sniper school.
What was the feeling like with the people there? Was it excitement? Was it, I know, I mean, it was a great tragedy, but realistically, you're in a group of war fighters.
Yeah.
And then war is in the air.
It was, it's crazy to think about back then because nobody knew what we were in store for. I think...
You're going to basically pick a fight with the war.
Yeah. I mean, we were on the rifle range when 9/11 happened, and they called it out over the loudspeaker, like, hey, a plane has just crashed, and then the second one, and then it was like all hell broke loose. We had to run back to our barracks.
What were you hearing? Like, what was the conversation? We were attacked?
At that time, yeah, we were...
Just a vague enemy?
Yeah, like no real information was put out, just that the planes had flown to the towers, and the one that hit the Pentagon, and then the other one that had crashed. But at that time, they thought there was going to be more attacks. So they're like, hey, we're prepping... They're coming.
We're probably going to fight at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck.
So it was that thought process for a while, and then in typical military fashion, it was hurry up and wait. We had our bags packed, ready to go wherever.
So basically just
months and months. And it wasn't until I think 2003 we deployed, and we went on a ship, and we ended up going into Mosul, Iraq, for not that, it was like a month until the army came in and took over. And then we actually ended up going to Africa, Liberia during that whole skirmish when I think the president had been assassinated. So we were going there to
basically the U.S. picked the fight like across the globe.
Yeah, as they always do.
Yeah. Iraq. Like, what's that? Like, that's your first combat deployment.
Yeah.
What's that like? Like I mean, when I say is there excitement? Is there dread? Is there?
There's definitely excitement. It's the unknown, and I try to explain to people back then. Nobody knew what they were doing. Even the leadership, they'd never been to war. Like
it was a separation of time between like highly experienced people that went to do shit.
Yeah.
And then again being back in that setting. So there's
it was like an unknown up and down the ranks. So you really didn't have anybody to lean on to be like, what's this going to be like, or what should we expect? Because even the leadership was like, we'll see. You know, I remember getting on the helicopters, and about to go fly in, and I mean, I filled my ruck up with as much ammo. I mean, and that's the thing. There was no direction on, hey, this is what you need and this is what you don't need. It was like, take everything.
Yeah,
you know.
Let's see what.
And I remember the colonel came up into our helicopter before we took off, and he was just like, expect to be taking rounds when you land. And we're like, what? Okay. You know, and went into it that way. And obviously that didn't happen. We landed, and some Army SF dudes were already there, and four-wheelers. They're like, hey, what's up? And we're like, all right, you know. So that was, you know, my first introduction to it. And, you know, it didn't last long. Like I said, we were only there for, I can't even remember, like 3 weeks at most. Not a lot happened. I think there was a couple firefights, but nothing crazy. And then we ended up shifting over to Africa for that. And then I came back from that deployment, and that's when I went right to Buds. I had orders right when I got back, and pretty much packed my stuff up, drove across to San Diego, and did started my journey, you know, in the SEAL teams.